and it basically went into the public domain almost, and we got various bootleg releases. Like I got my dad for Christmas got me something a lot of years ago now. Time flies. This version, Satanic Rites, from Alpha Video of all places. So basically a bootleg. It's fine, but you whereas you could just see that it wasn't what it should be. The sound isn't the best, and the pictures, you know, it was. But again, it's just nice to have this wonderful thing, and I love Satanic Rites. I really, really do, because it's a weird little thing. It is. And I mean that in a nice way, because when the film, in a lot of ways, it's more of like political, an espionage thing, and then, oh yeah, by the way, Dracula's in it. And you're like, why? And he just is. He's the mastermind behind the whole thing. So but again, it's unique. It's unique, and obviously, at this point, Hammer was, in its twilight days. It was, obviously it had had a tremendous amount of success in the late 50s, and, on top throughout the 60s. But then as we got into the 70s, it started, this was where it came to its end. And then obviously, they'd done so many Dracula films, and it was like, how do we try and reinvent it? And then obviously with Dracula AD 1972, they brought him into the present, which again, it's interesting idea, but it's schlocky. Dracula AD, I love the film, but it's schlocky. And one of the criticisms, which I do think is fair, is that you've got basically out of touch creatives involved. Like you have men in the 50s, maybe even the 60s, and they're trying to write stuff that's going to appeal to teenagers, people in their early 20s. And, you've got obviously a young cast of characters in AD 72. Obviously, you've got Stephanie Beacham and her group of friends. And you see the dialogue that they're having to deliver, and you're thinking, this is like how old people think young people talk. And, it hurts the film. But it's schlock. It's charming, but it's schlock. Obviously, one of the things I will say, the bookends of the film, you have the opening carriage fight, and then obviously when Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee square off again at the end in the church. The bookends of Dracula AD 1972 are phenomenal. It's just obviously all the stuff in between that's questionable. One thing that isn't questionable, of course, is Caroline Munro in the tights and the thigh-high boots. And obviously Stephanie Beacham's tremendous equipment, which is quite nicely displayed as we get into the final act of the film, where she's wearing that wonderful white gown. Obviously, it's very strategically cut around the cleavage. But so we got sex sells, and obviously as Hammer got into the 70s, they got bigger and bolder. But yeah, it's AD 72 schlock. What I like more about Satanic Rites is that it seemed as though they were actually trying something to do something more interesting, whereas AD 72, I think you could say, was something more of a cash grab, and more of like out of ideas, scraping the bottom of the barrel, whereas Satanic Rites, it felt as though they were actually had an interesting concept. You got this espionage angle, the fact that Dracula is masquerading as this guy, this D.D. Denham, who's the owner of this corporation, and he's infiltrated high society, and he's basically recruited a number of key figures in the British government to be part of this cult. And then obviously we delve deeper and realise, oh wait, Dracula's going to bring about the apocalypse. He wants an end to his suffering. He's going to bring an end to his suffering, and he's going to quote Van Helsing in the film, he's going to bring the entire universe down with him. It's intriguing stuff. And the way there's a lovely moment at the end when Peter Cushing confronts Dracula about this and says, "Is this your death wish?" And the look that Christopher Lee gives him, and he never answers him, but it's a nice little subtle moment. And obviously, one of the I mean, there's a lot of stuff I like in this film, Satanic Rites. There's also a lot of hawky, goofy stuff, but there's some great stuff in here. And one of the great things in this is the sequence where Peter Cushing goes to the main building, or the headquarters, if you like, of the Denham companies, and he goes to confront Mr. Denham. Goes to the top of the tower block to his penthouse, and obviously the way the scene's shot, you've got obviously the dark figure sat at the desk, the way the light and the way the room's lit, he's lit in shadow, and but you can see it's Christopher Lee, and Peter Cushing sits down on the other side of the table, and they just have this great back and forth, and it's a wonderful opportunity for Christopher Lee to act, because he puts on an accent to disguise the voice, and it's reminiscent of Lugosi's voice. And you always, one of the things that was always nice when Christopher Lee talked about Dracula is the tremendous reverence that he had for Bela Lugosi. Um, and even down to wearing a replica of the signet ring that Lugosi wore, on his little finger. So Christopher Lee obviously had tremendous respect for what Lugosi did, and then obviously doing an homage to him here by affecting a similar sort of accent. But what's interesting as well, and it's really nice, when you listen to Lee's dialogue in this, because obviously this was one of his criticisms, with each subsequent Dracula sequel, he was getting less and less to do and less dialogue. And obviously, we're getting further and further away from Stoker's original material. But what's nice here in this sequence, Christopher Lee gets a good chunk of dialogue to play around with, and the way he delivers it, he's so much more animated. Because obviously, as Dracula, he's very stoic, whereas here, when he's masquerading as this D.D. Denham, it's so you can feel the energy, and you're thinking, hang on, Christopher Lee's enjoying himself in this scene. And the delivery is wonderful, and it's so animated. But then obviously when the illusion's ultimately shattered, and then obviously he dials back into the Dracula persona. But Satanic Rites is a really, really interesting one. It's really unique, really creative, more so than AD 72. And as you say, there's some great stuff in there, even though there's a lot of hawkiness, a lot of schlockiness in there as well.